My name is Kai-Shen, and now I will talk about the parties involved. For the first plaintiff is a co-owner of the family home, which jointly owning the property with the third plaintiff. Ismail bin Bilal, the second plaintiff, is the first plaintiff's son and the brother of the third plaintiff. Alias bin Bilal, the third plaintiff, was determined to be of unsound mind and incapable of managing his affairs at the time of the mortgage execution. On the defendant's side, the first defendant, Maha Private Limited Company, is the company that benefits from the mortgage loan. The second defendant, Abdul Hamid bin Bilal, a director of the company and brother to the second and third plaintiff, was also involved in the transaction. Finally, the third defendant, Habib Bank Limited Liability, is the foreign bank that grants the loan and secure it through a mortgage over the family property. For the fact of the case, the family property located at 344 Onan Road was jointly owned by the first and third plaintiff. On 17 December 1974, a mortgage deed was signed to secure a loan by Habib Bank Limited Liability to Maha Private Limited Company. However, the purpose on the loan was intended for the Maha Private Limited Company's benefit and unrelated to the personal and familial needs of the property owners. The third plaintiff, born in 1935, displayed significant development delays from an early age, including late milestones in walking and speaking. He was unable to take care of himself and had difficulty understanding what was said to him and had to repeat it many times. He depended on family for care and unable to comprehend the mortgage transaction. Based on the above background of the third plaintiff, he was not in a position to understand the whole story and make a judgment in this mortgage matter. Therefore, during the mortgage transaction, the second plaintiff acted as the representative of the third plaintiff. He was to be the contact person for the transaction, and the second plaintiff had to explain the whole agreement to the third plaintiff. However, the second plaintiff was to be granted a loan in the name of the company associated with the second defense. Then, the property's title deeds were submitted to the bank by the second plaintiff. However, the third plaintiff only participated by providing his thumbprint, but lack of understanding the transaction or independent legal advice. The plaintiff argued that the deed was unlawful because the third plaintiff lacked the mental ability to understand the transaction. The claim was supported by the previous court investigation in 1978, which found that the third plaintiff to be of unsound mind and incapable of managing the affairs. Additionally, they agreed that the second plaintiff unduly influenced the third plaintiff during the deed's execution.
Hi, my name is Kahao. Now I'm going to present about the dispute issue. The main dispute issue is whether the third plaintiff understood the mortgage transactions because the third plaintiff found the incapable of understanding complex concepts, such as the third plaintiff did not sign the deed but placed his thumbprint in the contract. However, the bank expert argued that he could be able to understand the simplified explanations. In the end, the court ultimately accepted the plaintiff's argument that the third plaintiff lacked of the necessary understanding about the contract. The other thing is plaintiff's agreement on the bank rule, because at no time did the bank deal directly with the both owner of the property, but dealing with the owner of the property through the second plaintiff rather than directly. The bank had made the second plaintiff its agent, and the bank must be imputed to have the knowledge which the second plaintiff have of the mental incapacity of the third plaintiff, so that bank should be held responsible for the second plaintiff knowing of the third plaintiff incapacity, make the transaction invalid. Last but not least, the plaintiff claimed that the second plaintiff have significant influence over the third plaintiff's decisions since he was his brother. It was argued that this influence and a lot of the explanation of the implication of the mortgage make the deed voidable. Lastly, the court concluded that the mortgage deemed as voidable due to the third plaintiff's mental incapacity and the undue influence exerted by the second plaintiff. It was held that the third plaintiff did not understand the nature or the implication of the transactions. Lawyer carelessness contributed the invalidations, and the bank reliance on the second plaintiff and the intermediaries was improper, so that due to this factor above, the court decision to set aside the contract.
Hi, my name is Winnie. Next, I will continue to discuss the legal issues in case involving a mortgage agreement, focusing on two key points. The first is validity of the contract and the capacity of the contract. We will look at whether the contract is valid and if the parties involved had the ability to legally agree to it. The first issue is whether the contract between the plaintiff who own the property and the defendant, the bank, and the other parties is valid. Now, let's dive into the key issues that are affecting the validity of the mortgage contract in this case. The first issue is mental capacity of the third plaintiff. The third plaintiff was mentally incapacitated when the mortgage was signed, meaning he might not have fully understood what he was agreeing to. This raises this question: did he have the mental ability to understand the mortgage agreement? The second is undue influence. The second plaintiff is accused of undue influence. This means he might have pressured or manipulated the third plaintiff into agreeing to a mortgage. This can make the contract invalid if the third plaintiff didn't truly consent on his own. Next, the third issue is bank negligence. The bank is being questioned on whether it made sure the third plaintiff understood what he was agreeing to. If the bank didn't ensure that each could make the contract voidable, meaning the third plaintiff might be able to cancel it. So, the court needs to decide what the third plaintiff able to consent to the contract, and did the bank make sure he understood the mortgage. Now, the second issue is capacity to the contract. This means that for any contract to be valid, the people involved must have the legal ability to agree it. There are a few basic requirements is legal issues, sound mind, free from the undue influence, and no legal restriction. In this case, the third plaintiff has a mental incapacity, meaning he might not have been able to understand the mortgage agreement when assigned it. This makes it hard to know whether his consent was valid. So the court has to decide whether the third plaintiff was mentally capable of agreeing to the mortgage and whether that the affect to validity of the contract.
Hi, I'm Han. So now I will move on to Article 3 regarding the identification of legal issues. Undue influence occurs when one party utilizes their position of power or trust to coerce another party into making decisions they otherwise wouldn't have. Based on the case, the second plaintiff and the brother of the third plaintiff may have exploited their familiar relationship. The second plaintiff, who was representing both co-owners during the mortgage transaction, had considerable control over the proceeding and gave the third plaintiff, who was mentally troubled and unable to understand the terms of the agreement and explanation of the mortgage terms. Since the second plaintiff also benefited from the loan through his business, Maha pre-limited there is a serious worry that he might have put his own interest first and manipulated the third plaintiff into seeing the deed without completely explaining its terms. The court must determine whether the second plaintiff took advantage of his familiar relationship and the weakened position of the third plaintiff to pressure him into agreeing to the mortgage. Okay, next to the bank-related obligations, the issues extend to the bank's obligation in the transaction. Particularly, it has to be determined if the bank knows at the time execution the mental infirmity of the third plaintiff. The lawyer representing the bank also plays a vital role, since any neglect in notifying the third plaintiff of the consequences of the mortgage transaction could nullify the deed. Given the story provided, the lawyer clearly failed to appreciate the third plaintiff's incapacity, as evidenced by his use of fingerprints instead of signatures. So this section deals with two main issues: whether the defendant bank was aware of the third plaintiff's mental condition, and whether the lawyers acting for the bank adequately explained the terms and the consequence of the deed to the third plaintiff. Inability to understand the entire story, and whether this omission compromised the validity of the transaction.
Hi, my name is Singi. Now I'm going to explain the analysis of the court decision and the reasons. In this case, the court deemed that the mortgage was voidable and be set aside. The third plaintiff's siblings, who were associated with Maha Private Limited, imposed the undue influence. The court concluded that the bank should have realized the third plaintiff's mental disorder and the undue influence against him. As a consequence, the court voided the mortgage.
So right now, I'll be talking about the first fact that led to the court's decision. So the first fact was the mental incapacity of the third plaintiff. The court has terminated the contract specifically due to the mental incapacity of the third plaintiff, whose name was Alias bin Bilal. The court has deemed him incapable of understanding the terms and implication of the mortgage agreement. In accordance with Section 12(2) of the Contracts Act 1950, individuals must possess a sound mind to compose a legally enforceable contract. This is because an individual who has a sound mind can only make reasonable decisions according to the contract. Alias bin Bilal, the third plaintiff, has medical evidence to prove that he is suffering from a mental disorder that has compromised his ability to make informed and reasonable decisions, rendering him unable to provide a valid authorization. Contracts that involve individuals who have mental disabilities are voidable if the other party was aware that they have a mental disability. This concept was supported by a case called the Imperial Loan Limited Company versus Stone that happened in 1892, which concluded that an individual that has unsound mind cannot be obligated to sign a contract if the other party was not conscious about their mental incapacity. Furthermore, another case that happened in 1918 called the Moore versus Bainham case has highlighted the significance of mental capacity when establishing a contract. So all in all, the bank in this case has inadequately assessed the plaintiff's mental state, which has led to the decision that the mortgage is terminated and voidable. So right now, I will talk about undue influence. In this scenario, the court has evaluated the burden of proof in circumstances with undue influence. This is because the plaintiff has argued that their agreement was coerced by an individual in the position of trust. Based on Section 16(3) of the Contracts Act 1950, undue influence is a major impact of impropriety by one party upon another party who is in a position of susceptibility. Chaesong BTE Yip has accused that his siblings abused their dominant position to force him into signing the mortgage agreement. They did this because they want to favor Maha PTE private limited company. The court has clarified that the burden of proof is with the plaintiff to demonstrate that undue influence is prevailed. So once they have demonstrated the existence of the confidential relationship between the parties, the inference of undue influence emerges. So in this instance, the burden transfers to the defendant to dispute the assumption by presenting proof of the transaction was conducted willingly with a comprehensive comprehension. So this principle can be aligned with previous cases that happened in the year of 1894, namely the case of Sawaf Hanim versus Haji Abdullah. The court has determined that familial connections or fiduciary connections will establish inference of undue influence that obligates the dominant party to demonstrate the absence of such influence. So in Chaesong BTE Yip, because the brothers were unable to dispute the accusation of undue influence, therefore, the court has no choice but to void the contract.
The last reason for the court decisions is the negligence of bank in due diligence. The court held that the banks failed to conduct due diligence was the major factor in the contract voidability. According to Section 24 of the Contract Act, the contract was deemed void due to the carelessness of handling potential legal deficiency. When authenticating the reliability of high-risk transactions, particularly those involving vulnerable parties like Chaesong binti Yip, banks are supposed to take necessary precautions. Despite numerous indications of undue influence and mental incapacity, the bank decided to refuse to investigate into the situation leading to the mortgage agreement. According to the proactive notification theory, banks must be informed of any suspicious behavior. The House of Lords concluded in the Barclays Bank that banks have a responsibility to ensure that clients voluntarily and fully comprehend agreement, particularly when third parties are involved. In another similar case, the court held in Creditliners Bank Netherlands that banks are required to verify the parties at risk are conscious and agree to high-risk contract. A lack of due care was the evidence in the bank failures to verify Chaesong binti Yip's mental capacity and the undue influence she encounters.
The evaluation and the discussion of strength is addressing the coercion and undue influence. Even though the screening of the second plaintiff role was limited, the fact that court considered whether he is exerted pressure on the third plaintiff is a positive step, so that the court applied the equitable principle effectively, protect the third plaintiff from the exploitations, and the ensuring that transactions involving undue influence were set aside. The second is the recognition of the mental capacity in the contract formations. Psychiatric evaluation demonstrates the plaintiff's inability to understand the nature of the transactions. Dr. Detail's analysis that emphasized the third plaintiff's lack of the capacity, supporting the conclusion that he could not have the comprehend the implication of the mortgage deed. By considering the third plaintiff's mental impairments, the court recognized the importance of the safeguarding vulnerable individual from the entering into the potentially unfair and exploitations contract.
So the first weakness of this court case is the limited scrutiny of the second plaintiff's role. So the second plaintiff played a key role in arranging the mortgage and was accused of pressuring the third plaintiff who had mental impairments. So the court did not truly determine the second plaintiff's intentions and whether he intentionally hid the third plaintiff's incapacity from the bank. So this explains that the court did not truly examine whether the second plaintiff has deliberately concealed the third plaintiff's inability to act or make decisions from the bank. And as a result, there is uncertainty about whether the second plaintiff acted in good faith or intentionally withheld important information from the bank. The second weakness about this court case is the insufficient information for mental capacity. So the judgment recognized that the importance of mental capacity in contract formation, but they failed to establish a clear method to assess it. So the weakness is that the absence of a framework left ambiguity in determining how mental capacity should be evaluated in these cases. So for example, the court should have clarified what types of evidence, for example, medical report or behavioral assessment, insufficient to prove incapacity, or they could have addressed whether banks or lawyers should require mental capacity certifications before finalizing contracts with potential vulnerable individual. So this weakness explains that the court did not provide a clear guideline on assessing mental capacity in case like this. So they failed to specify what kind of evidence like medical report or behavioral assessment to prove someone's incapacity. So this lack of clear framework creates confusion and uncertainty in handling such situations.
Okay, good day everyone. In this slide, we will explore the broader implications of the case and its impact on legal and societal frameworks. So first, this case highlights the necessity for clearer guidelines and stronger legal protections for individuals with mental disabilities, particularly in financial and property transactions. It underscores how the absence of proper safeguards can lead to exploitations and financial vulnerability. This is crucial for fostering equity in contract law, especially for vulnerable parties. Second is that the case raises important questions about corporate responsibility and consumer protections. Institutions like banks and lawyers must adopt due diligence practices to ensure that parties involved in contracts fully understand the terms. Particularly when dealing with individuals who may lack mental capacity, this could involve requiring medical assessment or certifications of mental capacity before finalizing agreements. And lastly is that the case pushes for legal reforms to balance contract enforceability with protections for vulnerable individuals, such as reforms could mitigate risk of exploitation, safeguard ethical practices in high risk and also transactions, and set a precedent for prioritizing fairness and accountability within the legal system. Overall, this case is not only illustrates the shortcomings in the current legal framework, but also serves as a stepping stone for advancing consumer protections and corporate ethics in the financial sector itself. Okay everyone, my name is Farsad Wasgantia and today I'll be sharing the reflections and insights gained by our groups during the preparations of this assignment, which focus on the case of Chisom BTE Yip and ORS v Maha PTE Limited and ORS. So one of the key challenges we faced was understanding the complex legal aspect of the case, particularly issues related to mental capacity and undue influence. This required thorough research and analysis to grasp the determinants of the court's judgment. Additionally, organizing and distributing tasks among the team while managing our time effectively was a constant effort. To overcome these challenges, we employed several strategies. Regular meetings and discussion help us stay on track and address any misunderstanding early on. We utilized online tools for coordination, which streamlined communication and task management. Good time management practices ensured we could meet deadlines while maintaining the quality of our work. This process has taught us the importance of clear communication within the team, which significantly reduced misunderstandings and improved collaborations. We also developed valuable skills in understanding, explaining, and analyzing legal cases. The diversity of perspective within the team enriched our learning experience and contributed to a more comprehensive analysis of the case. Looking ahead, we identified areas for improvement. For future assignments, we aim to focus on planning earlier and more efficient task division. Additionally, dedicating more time to reviewing each other's work will help ensure even greater accuracy and also quality. In conclusion, this assignment was a valuable experience that enhanced both our legal analysis capabilities and teamwork skills. The dedication and effort from every group member led to successful outcomes, and the lessons we learned will undoubtedly be beneficial in our future studies and also careers. Thank you so much.